Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the stately Vaughan Manor. I've returned to the stately Vaughan Manor once again from my vacation up at the rustic Vaughan Lodge, where I spent an awful long time putting a roof on a barn. That was fun. Don't have to worry about that sort of thing down here, so that's good. Back at the manor, where I am going to be talking to you today about e-readers and e-reading. Reading electronically. And the reason I'm talking about it is because while I was up there, I saw a live stream that Steve Donahue did. Steve Donahue on his channel does live streams now, like every 5 minutes. And this live stream that he did was focused on e-readers and e-books because a lot of Steve's viewers have told him that their go-to way to read nowadays, for many of them, is e-readers. They will reach for their e-reader as opposed to reaching for a physical book. Even if they have the physical book available, they will read that book on their device, just because of the convenience factor, comfort of the comfort of the reading experience. There are various reasons for it, and it made me think about e-readers and e-reading and the relationships that we develop with what we read and the way we read, whether we read primarily physical books or primarily electronic e-readers. It got me thinking about it. I was reading a book, actually still I'm reading the same book, Ghost Story by Peter Straub, which is great, by the way. I don't know how I didn't read that book years ago, because that is a really good book. I've been pretty impressed with it so far. About a quarter of the way through it, a little more than that. Really good. Anyway, I bring that up because I'm reading that book on Kindle. I do not own a physical copy of Ghost Story. And I will probably get more of Peter Straub's books. If they're as good as this one, I'm definitely going to be reading more of his work. I probably will not get them in physical copies, though. And I was thinking also about my Read Every Book by Stephen King challenge, which I've got going on. I'm reading every book by Stephen King in publication order. Most of the books I've read in physical form because I happen to have those books. But going forward, I probably will not buy any more physical Stephen King books. He wrote, how many books did this guy write? He wrote a ton of books. Do I need all of those books if I'm probably going to read most of them only once? Probably not. I probably will almost certainly read them on my Kindle. And it goes, for a lot of authors, it's kind of like that for me. And I think it's probably like that for a lot of people. Obviously, I like physical books. Obviously. I really love them as physical objects. I like the way they look. I just like everything about them. I really like books a lot. And if you've seen any of my book hauls, I have book hauls once in a while. I really like books like this one. This is Donovan's Brain. Look at this great cover. This is an old vintage paperback. I love old vintage paperbacks. I absolutely love them, which is why I pick up so many, particularly science fiction vintage paperbacks, some horror paperbacks, that kind of stuff. Love them, so I will always pick them up. I mean, look at that cover. That's fantastic. Donovan's Brain, a book I need to read. But the conversation that Steve had on his live stream really got me thinking about the way I read, and I'm wondering about the way you read. And I've had a lot of people, whenever I mention Kindles or e-readers, whatever, there's always somebody who will say, well, I would never do that. I would never read on a Kindle or a device. I love physical books, and that's how I am always going to read, on physical books only. I mean, that's fine. You could read however you want. It's entirely your decision, of course. Not telling you what you should do. I just find that a little I mean, I get it. I've also heard that people have spent a lot of, they spend all day looking at computer screens. They don't want to look at screens anymore. They want the look and feel of a physical book to escape from that. That I kind of get. I get that. It doesn't really work that way for me, but I kind of get the idea. There are two different things at work here. There's reading, and there are books. They are two different things. Okay, the experience of reading is separate from, I guess you could say, the delivery system. What you're reading from. That's entirely different. I kind of think that maybe the less you have to think about what the delivery system is, the better. If you're just absorbed in the story, if you're just absorbed in reading the story, that is what's important. That's more important than anything else. The actual reading is what's important. And for me, this is a different thing than actual reading. I've found I've turned into kind of a collector in my golden years. As an old person, as an old man, I've turned into a collector. I collect these paperback books. I collect some what criminology would call posh books, the fancy editions of certain books that I love. I collect those. It's true. But for me, I've kind of figured out that this is separate from reading itself. Because to be perfectly honest, usually when I read, it's on this. It's on an e-reader. For a lot of basically simple reasons. Convenience is one thing. You can carry this thing everywhere. You could fill it with 9 million books if you want to. And the actual reading experience, you can't really, well, maybe you can see it a little bit, but the reading experience on this is better than it would be with this. It just is. This is a superior reading experience. You can get totally lost in a book with this. In a way, I think probably easier than you could with a physical book, because this is really easy to handle physically. It's light. I mean, it's just everything about this is kind of designed to make you forget about the reader itself. It's just so you can concentrate on the story itself. Has a bunch of other advantages, and you probably know what they are. And I find if I have a choice, I'm always going to go with the e-reader. I always seem to now. It seems to be my go-to thing. And so what I'm basically saying is, I think in the modern world, where we have e-readers available to us, unless you're really into the books as physical objects themselves, as I happen to be, obviously, this is unnecessary. You don't need this to be a reader. You could love novels and stories as much as I do and not own a single one of these. All you need to do is own one of these, and I would recommend you also own one of these. Tablets are not as good of a reading experience as these e-ink readers. First of all, you're not going to be interrupted when you're reading this with texts or any other kind of messages, although you can set this up for that too. But this is strictly a reading machine, and it's excellent at that. There are some other types of books, though, where this little device probably isn't so great. Comic books are one. But also when you're talking about big volumes like this, like the annotated Lovecraft, for example, which is a big, 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 heavy book, which I also happen to have, if I can open it up here, on my tablet. if I could. Yeah, there you go. And you could just go right through. You can't see it great on this screen, but I have that book, the new annotated H.P. Lovecraft, on this tablet, and it's really cool. It's much lighter, and if you need to get to the footnotes, it goes right to them, which you can't see. You can kind of see it there. The footnotes appear at the bottom when you hit them, and you can just go right on with your reading experience. So, and the illustrations show up magnificently in this. This is how I read a lot of those big giant books that I have up there on the shelves. A lot of them, if they're available as an ebook, I read them on the tablet more often than not because it's light and convenient and easy to carry. So even with a lot of these big books like the annotated Sherlock Holmes and all of those things, you don't need physical copies of those. You don't need them. All you really need is this and maybe this. And as a reader, you're set, you know? I happen to like this stuff, but it's not necessary. For the actual reading, I mean, this is probably all you really need. And I think some people do have issues with that. I think it's hard for some people to let go of this, and some people feel guilty because like, well, I've got all of these books, and you know, they feel guilty because they're not actually reading them. Your books don't care. I'm just letting you know. Your books don't care that you're not reading them. Honestly. They're just as happy on the shelf as they would be if you were reading them. It's true. It's hard to believe, but it's true. For the actual reading experience, honestly, I think this wins. What do you think? You think I'm crazy? I might be. But, you know, I mean, I love these. Like I said. But when I get around to reading Donovan's Brain, am I going to be reading this paperback? Probably not. First of all, it's fragile. You know, it's every time you read one of these things, it's in worse condition after you read it. And as a collector, I want it to stay in as nice collection as in a nice condition as I can keep it in. And that's just, you know. So yeah, even when I read Donovan's Brain, I'll probably read it on this. That's all I have to say about this today. I'll shut up now and stop talking. But if you have any thoughts on e-readers or e-reading, if you've managed to make it through this entire dull, ramble-filled video, let me know what you think. I'm always interested. Now, I know I'm way behind in my comments. I'm like 3 days behind. I will get to them, though. Man, I'm way behind, but I'll get to them. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day.